Kunja Bihari Jai. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjanaya Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Store of Shishya Mata's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Store of Shishya Mata's Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Anantikoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Naam Acharya Silaharidas Thakur Ki Prem Sakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Sisi Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Navadip Dham Ki Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Hare Krishna. So thank you for coming today. Our old friends Nandarani and Krishna Balaram. Prabhu. Appreciate your presence also. So we're going to read from the Juhu story, and I'll try to paraphrase as much as possible. Let's see, 551. Oh yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This chapter is titled Preaching in Prayag and Bombay, and this page that we stopped, we're going to start today, is speaking about when Prabhupada was in London, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj had written a letter to a devotee called Hamsaduta. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj is describing Prabhupada's journey to London. And he was saying how the ride was very difficult. It was Took 18 hours to a 6-hour delay. There was strike at the airport. But Srila Prabhupada tolerated the ride. And he arrived all right. And that's like an important, I was just wondering that he was really ill at that time when he left Vrindavan, where is he in Vrindavan? Anyway, when he left for London. And he was pretty ill. But he tolerated the journey. And in Krishna consciousness, it's an important quality to possess, tolerance. It's not an easy quality after even if you've been for a while around, to be tolerant to just devotees and management and so many areas of difficulties you can be exposed to in Krishna consciousness. But it's an important quality, and when you tolerate it, then you make a lot of advancement. And when you come to that level of tolerance, it's like coming to the third stage that I was explaining. Trinadapi sunichena, in the Sisastikam, Trinadapi sunichena, taroreva sahishtana, amanina manedena kirtanya sadahari. One should one should chant the holy name of the Lord constantly in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street, and one should be more tolerant than a tree devoid of all sense of false prestige. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. So that itself is on a level of nishta, steadiness. That is steadiness. And as devotees, we should try to come to at least that level, because it's not so easy to come to this level. It's always a challenge to rise up to, getting free from our anarthas may take us probably our lifetime sometime. But coming to, like where one is fixed, then one becomes tolerant. So I thought I'll just comment on that. He really he was enjoying his staying at the manor, and he says that is the best house in the world. Srila Prabhupada had this way of saying, like encouraging others and inspiring everybody. Wherever he went, he said, this is the best deities in the world, this is the best house in the world. So just like sometimes when we go take prasadam, somebody we say, you're the best cook, it's like that. So just to encourage the devotees. The atmosphere was very, very peaceful, and he was not at all in so much anxiety. Then, at the same day, Tamal Krishna Maharaj wrote to Giriraj Maharaj, and he said, Srila Prabhupada has just undergone a minor surgical operation, which seems to have come out successfully. His divine grace is resting, but is very, very weak, at least as weak as he was in Vrindavan. Please pray for his recovery and have all the devotees there also to do so. So, when we offer prayers, and there's some survey carried out that generally people recover faster if somebody is praying for them than people who are, don't have people praying for them. And the recovery rate seems to be a little faster. Then meanwhile, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was making arrangements for Prabhupada to go to America. But at the day of the Vyasa Puja, Prabhupada's health went down. And Prabhupada said, and then the following day he said, if I live a few days more, let me see the opening of the Bombay temple. I have worked so hard for it. If I see at the opening and then die, it will be a very peaceful death. So he really desired to see the opening of the temple, which he really didn't make it, really. Then, Then they leave London and they now going to Bombay. And when they landed in Bombay, they try to finalize all the immigration papers as quickly as possible because due to Prabhupada's help, and they managed to do that. Then there were a few devotees there: Gargamuni, Bali Madan, Haridas Prabhu, and Giriraj Maharaj. And they informed Giriraj Maharaj informed the devotees, not to come to the airport or rush to. When Prabhupada had come to Bombay, then they should be like at a distance, don't get too close to him. Otherwise he'll have to reciprocate to them and it may tie him. So inform the devotees. And then this is interesting. I said, upon arrival, Prabhupada went straight to his quarters and he went right to bed. He called for me, that is, he called for Giriraj Maharaj, and I came and sat on the floor beside him. He spoke about his time in England and the kirtans there. They were wonderful. He said, he also told me that K.J. Somaya had come to visit him in Vrindavan and upon seeing his bedridden condition had started to weep. When I asked if the hammering and chiseling and other noises of the construction would disturb him, he replied that it was like music for his ears. He then closed his eyes and lay back to rest. So it is a very important project for Prabhupada, Bombay. But he spent, when being on the planet, he spent most of the, I think the most time, it says there somewhere, many, like over a year in all his travels in Mumbai or Bombay. So it was very special to him because of the struggles that he had gone through and how he had to fight with the government. So it was very, very special to him. So even these little disturbances like noise when they're building the temple didn't really matter to him. Those were like, he went through worse things. So it didn't really matter to him. It was like music to his ears. Another way of seeing it is like a devotee sees everything, he sees Krishna in everything. It's being built for the pleasure of Krishna, so he can tolerate. That's another thing. Like sometimes we can't tolerate noise here. It's like difficult for us to tolerate sometimes when noise are around, when we're building so we can learn from Prabhupada how tolerant he was, especially in preaching Krishna consciousness. When Prabhupada awoke toward the end of the day, Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked him if the noises were bothering him. Then Prabhupada responded, these sounds do not disturb me at all. Because he's thinking, Prabhupada responds, said, because I'm thinking that work is being completed. Although Prabhupada felt restless sometimes in London, and he says, how in London I was feeling restless, but not here. So you can see the difference in consciousness, that although which was noisy, he's still feeling okay, because there's his preaching is going on. His temple is being built for preaching to go on. So he always saw it like that. And when you study Srila Prabhupada's life deeply, I've been listening to Giriraj Maharaj for like 37 or 38 years, every day, all the time. Speaking about Prabhupada, he never missed his lectures. In all his lectures, he quoted Prabhupada. And and I was amazed by his memory, how he remembers everything, because he's so consistent in what he says. He's very consistent, right? Very, very consistent in what he says. So like this. It is because I like Bombay. Of all the cities in India, I like it the most. So he was prepared to tolerate everything because he liked Bombay, because he promised that he's going to build a temple for Radha Rasa Bihari. So Prabhupada suggested that we have that some devotees be chosen to do kirtan, and two devotees were chosen, and they came into Prabhupada's room because Prabhupada thought that it'll be nice if I could die while hearing the chanting, or leave my body while hearing the chanting. Then the other devotee, Abhiram, Srila Prabhupada replied, Abhiram replied, from my observation it appears you have not become accustomed, that you have not become accustomed to old age. You could live this way for a very long time, simply lying in bed and preaching to disciples and seeing different devotees, and we would take care of you. So this was nice of Abhiram, and Abhiram is a good devotee. He was involved also in the hospice that opened in 2010 in Vrindavan. But taking care, this is, when somebody is aging and they're old, honestly, it's not easy to take care of them. And let me be quite frank, even if it's a devotee, sometimes we're not eager to help the person. But here we see that Srila Prabhupada, the disciples are eager to help him or take care of him. Because you make advancement, the secret of success for a disciple is to serve the spiritual master. Especially in the end. Serve him all time, but especially in the end, it's important to serve the spiritual master. Just like, it reminds me of Ramachandra Puri and Ishwara Puri. Ramachandra Puri became critical to his spiritual master when he was, in the end, leaving his body. But Ishwara Puri, served the spiritual master, did menial service. And that menial service he had done had given him love for Krishna. So Prabhupada writes in that purport, he says, in one of the purports, he says that this happens so the disciples, when the spiritual master become diseased and sick, it's an opportunity for the disciple to make spiritual advancement. That's what it is. So we have to take advantage of that service when the devotees are aging. And Giriraj Maharaj was saying that, probably earlier on, that how, Prabhupada, they had to, it was difficult for him to urinate. So one of the devotees, they used to have a bottle, and they would hold it closely to him so that he could urinate. He said, although Prabhupada didn't urinate, but just doing that service was so blissful. So that opportunity is given to the disciple when the spiritual master is ill or diseased. And Abhiram was massaging Prabhupada. And by massaging Prabhupada, it was giving him relief. And this is interesting. I found this interesting when I was reading it last night. I found this really interesting. Abhiram said to Prabhupada, he's talking to Prabhupada, he said, my giving service to you is giving me relief from my miserable material existence. This is very nice. By serving the pure devotee, it frees you from this material existence, because it's such a wonderful, when you serve a pure person, it's different. If somebody is materialistic and you serve him, and you serve a pure person, you will know the difference. There's quite a difference. Just like so many people trying to serve Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, and so many people give him gifts and so many things. So I'm going for a program, somebody is giving me a gift to give him. So I'm just thinking that it is a nice feeling that people want to serve the spiritual master. And as you serve, you'll become free from this material existence. And Prabhupada smiled. Abhiram told him that he had read that a sick person could get strength from a healthy person through massage. Prabhupada nodded. We disciples are ready to give our lives. Abhiram continued, otherwise we would be wasting them in sense gratification. And again, Prabhupada agreed. Because when it's interesting, you may have we're not free from, sense gratification. And we should never think like that, because at any moment, we can be subjected to, our Maya can attack us. But even when we have those thoughts, those bad thoughts or those thoughts to enjoy, but when you're serving the spiritual master, it's amazing how, if it's a pure person, how it goes away, all these thoughts. You may have this experience. These thoughts and this bad thoughts go away. So Prabhupada spent the whole next day in bed. And then he took he took some juice, some milk, and Complan also. We have that, yeah? Yeah, and nutritional milkshake, yeah. So it gave him strength. So then when Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked him how he was feeling, he only responded in one word, crisis. Really, he was battling. And the following morning, Srila Prabhupada asked for his japa mala, and then he kept him around his neck all day. So while he was resting, he was in bed, he was moving his beads. And then, but he chanted silently, and it reminded me, even in your disease condition, you must always try to chant. Like once I was in Vrindavan, you can collapse in Vrindavan, Nandarani. It was very hot, and so I was in the Parikram Marg, and I came to the temple, and as I was walking up the stairway in Krishna Balaram Mandir, I was staying there in the guest house, and I saw Kadama Maharaj, and he started talking to me, but I can know I'm going to fall down any moment. Just like couldn't manage, but I couldn't be rude to him also, because when we train that, that when there's somebody senior is speaking to you, we be very respectful to the speaker. So I was just waiting. I'm praying that when he finishes, because I just couldn't make it. But as I walked up the stairway to the next flight of stairs and went up, I collapsed. But in the background, I can hear the chanting of Hare Krishna. Like I'm chanting, that I'm doing. But I'm down on the floor. So Bhakti Briyat Bhagavat Maharaj, he rushed, he caught me and took me to the room. And he said, you were unconscious, but the good thing that you were chanting still. You were still chanting. And he took good care of me. Actually, he made arrangements, got a doctor. When I was, this is exactly how Prabhupada has been treated. And he was like, interesting that he took so much care that he never wanted me out of the room. But I just couldn't stay inside, Yeah, but I can well imagine how Prabhupada was feeling. But Prabhupada was chanting. And it's also reminded about how Haridas Thakur, I think Haridas Thakur, he could have stopped chanting. But he said, no, my only disease is that, that's my disease. It's the bad disease to stop chanting, actually. Chanting is important. So yeah, Prabhupada was fingering his beads despite his condition. Then, after that, Prabhupada asked for kirtan in his room, but when the two devotees, good singers, they came and chanted, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki Jai. So these two singers, they came and chanted, and Prabhupada dismissed them, saying that the kirtan was dead. I don't know if you use this terminology sometimes when somebody is singing. You know what it is. Kirtan is dead. Anyway, but then he had Lokanath Maharaj came, or Lokanath Prabhu at that time came, and he appreciated it very much. And then he asked for Tamal Krishna Maharaj to come and sit next to his bed and chant japa with him. So this is interesting. I mean, this Krishna Balram and Nandarani went this morning, and he told me that he's going to chant with Maharaj, and Maharaj is ill, we don't know, So yeah, so you can see that even Prabhupada was also called his disciple and told him to sit at his bedside and hear the chanting and chant. Prabhupada's physical condition seemed to be worsening. The next day he wanted to try a doctor who had cured the father of one of our neighbors, who was supposed to have been suffering from the same disease. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj dissuaded him, and Prabhupada agreed, saying, your advice is always very nice. So, a disciple is not meant to instruct the spiritual master. But in this case, it's okay because, depending on the mood, because the disciple can become like the parent of I don't know if you'll, becomes the parent, right? To the spiritual, although the spiritual master is the parent of the disciple, but the disciple becomes the parent. The roles are reversed. I remember one devotee, I think it's Moksha Lakshmi. She was saying how, I think they cooked a big feast for Prabhupada, and somehow, anyway, it was on a staircase that she was there, and she was going to get a Gayatri initiation. But she was overwhelmed with this feeling that Prabhupada is like her son. She was overwhelmed by that feeling. So that happens. And in cases where the disciple is caring for the spiritual master, they may even instruct the spiritual, put your mask on or something like that, or they may instruct the spiritual master. So it's not that it's offensive, it's okay. So then, I said I felt confident Prabhupada would remain to see the temple opening and go to Vrindavan also. Tamal Krishna Maharaj wrote in his diary, this pleased Srila Prabhupada very much, and with great feeling he rubbed my head and said, may your words be blessed. Bless me that I may fix up my mind. How can I am like stool, bless the pure devotee of the Lord. In the morning, Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked Prabhupada whether he could stay as he was in Juhu for 5 weeks until the temple opening. So he requests him to stay. Prabhupada was kind of agreed, but he said the next program is Vrindavan. So he was already preparing to go for Vrindavan. And due to his poor health, not many visitors were allowed. But that afternoon, all the devotees came. They were invited to see him, take darshan. And in a line, they all stood in a line and paid obeisances. And then they just left. And Prabhupada was sitting, his description is not nice to read it. But, you're sitting cross-legged behind his desk, holding his knees. You'll see him sometime holding his knees. And one of the devotees, Kanta, later remarked, they die before they go to that point. But Prabhupada just kept going. And the way it's written here, he was just skin and bones. So he was very, very weak. And then the devotees were getting messages. Sridhar Maharaj came, and normally when he comes, he liked to give his report. But they told him, take care, it's okay, not your report, but take darshan, and he could leave. But then Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked him whether would you like to see other important guests, and he said yes, 2 people, Bhogilal Patel and Kartikeya Mahadevya. So when this person, Kartikeya Mahadev, came, he saw Prabhupada's condition. He was just like silent. He was silent. And then this Kartikeya Mahadev, he started describing the political climate in India, the situation in India. And Prabhupada asked to be raised up, and he showed an unusual amount of interest in the topic. He was raised up, and he was. And then Prabhupada commented, they are missing the point. The whole world this is the disease of the body. One party is no better than the other. It is stool, one side or the other side. What can they do? Interesting. Then there was a young girl, a 12-year-old girl. When the temple was built, there were like tenants on the property. But there was a young girl. Her name was Smriti Warrior. She was very attached to Prabhupada, and she was accustomed to bringing him his breakfast every day. And she could just walk in any time. She was a young girl. She just walked in, and but then when Prabhupada was sick, she didn't see him for a long time. So she couldn't enter because there were security guards there also. Yeah. So one evening she came and she stood there and she was just crying. Then Tamal Krishna Maharaj allowed her to go in. But he instructed her to be very quiet. Just go in and come out. And Prabhupada was sleeping. She went in, she stood for a few moments, and she saw him very peaceful, not feeling pain. So what she did, she grasped his feet for a moment and then turned it and ran. So she said, I didn't know if I woke him up or not. But she just grabbed his mercy, and this was the last time she saw him. So, touching a sadhu's feet was very nice. It takes some of or lots of your karma. But the sadhu is very merciful. You can make a lot of advancement. Then after that, there was a Muslim who also came in for darshan, and he was from Iran, and he was helping to translate some of the books. He was helping a devotee, Atreya Rishi. And then the man asked Prabhupada whether everything is true in his books. And he said there were many incorrect statements because they did not agree with the Quran. So he was comparing it because he was attached to the Quran, and then he was ushered out. Right, go. And Prabhupada said we should be careful, and so surprised that such a person was engaged to translate his books. And Prabhupada said he shouldn't do it. Yeah. So at that point, we're moving to the next point where Giriraj Maharaj becomes ill now, and he was confined to a small room in the back of the property, and so he started listening to some songs. Anyway, he always listened to Vaishnava Acharya songs. He never, he was a devotee. He's a devotee. But he got a tape of Michael Cassidy. You know Michael Cassidy? Michael Cassidy. That's Mangalananda. Yeah, Mangalananda. So one song he written, Hidden World. And he heard that. But as he was playing, he was thinking of Srila Prabhupada. And he played it again and again, and he was reminded of Srila Prabhupada. And it's a very beautiful, there's two parts to it. Like one is, the song began with a description of what devotees are like, what they do, and what happens to them, what result they get. Oh, there's few parts to it. And when Maharaj was listening it, then there was a description of the spiritual abode, the life. That is our goal. And I'll just read that few lines. Where love supreme fills every eye, sweet jubilation fills the sky, as dancing milkmaids and cowherd boys play in forest green with joys of bale and jackfruit lily white, an endless full moon nectar night of dancing magic loving smiles and gopi damsels playing playful wiles. They sport in lotus lakes with he whose glances taste of ecstasy. It's beautiful, eh? Really beautiful, yeah. And then Giriraj Maharaj said he was sad that Prabhupada was so sick and might be leaving soon. But at the same time, he was heartened that he was going back to Godhead. In one sense, he said he was already there. And one day, he's talking about himself, I too was destined to join him there. So, they knew that Prabhupada's, is really reaching his end, is ill, and his condition has worsened. So he could not go down to the temple. So he asked for a photo of Radha Rasa Bihari, and on which he meditated. Then he asked, Tamal Krishna Maharaj to nail the framed picture to his best bedpost so that he could always see their lordships. So then, on awaking the next morning, he immediately began talking. Every living entity is suffering, he said, from Brahma to the ant, and there is no happiness. Then he closed his eyes and fell back asleep. Then when he woke up, then he's quoting the verse. Which verse? Chapter 7, text 14. Devyese gunamaya mamaya durachya. So he's quoting that verse. Then Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked him whether he was thinking these things or while sleeping. Yes, he replied. I was dreaming. And then he gives an account of how this body is a machine and it's bad. He's saying, he told Brahmananda and the other assistant that afternoon, you cannot expect me to have a young body like yours. It is material. When I was younger, I'd always recover. So as you get older, the machine is breaking down, and it's very difficult even for us, Like Nandarani was asking how old I am yesterday. I said this year in September I'll be 63 years old. So the body is deteriorating, and someday it'll be finished. But this is what Prabhupada said was interesting. Somehow or the other, I was born in a different community, a different atmosphere. You were born in a different community, a different atmosphere. I've given some idea and you have taken it, and the people have appreciated it. It is standard. Now it depends on you how to spread it. The ideas, the plan I've already written in my books. You have to take the direction and spread it all over the world. The reception is already there. If by Krishna's grace I survive, I'll certainly help you more and more. You can request Krishna's blessing to spare me. When Brahmananda said that Prabhupada's quarters were very nice and that in fact everything in the movement was made for his pleasure, Prabhupada replied, I cannot take these with me. I'm leaving them for your use. And then, Brahmananda has a brother, he's still alive, Gagamuni. And Gagamuni would only want to serve Srila Prabhupada. I remember in 2002, he was appreciating Srila Prabhupada, which is good, but also we must appreciate his associates and followers also. It's just not only Prabhupada, but he was appreciating Prabhupada and he could only serve Prabhupada. But Krishna, Krishna includes everything. His pure devotees, his paraphernalia, and the others. And devotional service becomes sweeter when you become the servant of the servant of the servant, then devotional service becomes sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. So that's the way it works. And then, Gagamuni replied that he could find no one in the world besides Prabhupada whom he would serve. And Prabhupada smiled and said, that I could understand. You are not one to serve anyone very easily. And he was kind of, and then he was appreciating Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, Gagamuni in 2002, and he was crying and he was saying that I was there, and Mr. Sethi was there also. Prabhupada always signed his letters, your ever well-wisher. He said 3 words, your ever well-wisher, and that he appreciated very much. That although despite all shortfalls, So I'll try to speed it up. I was going a little slow trying to, but now I got my pages to finish. Then later on, Prabhupada spoke about material enjoyment, wine, woman, flesh. Then he spoke about airplanes, how airplanes in the heavenly planets, like Karamuni, had an airplane just to show his wife what a great yogi he was. That's what he had the airplane for. Not the 747 is nothing, he said. So then, Jayapataka Maharaj comes in the scene. And then he goes on, there's many things. But he was really ill. And he was, as it said, there is no expectation of my living, my duration of life is finished. If by Krishna's grace I survive, that is another thing. He held up his arm, simply a bundle of bones. Whatever I drink is passed out. Now the platform for Krishna consciousness is made. If you work hard, it will succeed more and more. Distribute literatures, that will push on. So he was talking about pushing his books and giving Krishna consciousness to others. Then, there's so much to go through. Okay. Then they engaged a Vaidya, a doctor. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj expressed his doubts in the doctor. But Prabhupada, he chided him, for his non-cooperation. Because he felt that, Krishna could act through that doctor also. So then they followed him for a while, but it didn't really work. It didn't. He was not good. And then at one point there was kirtan in Prabhupada's room, and Abhiram, he described it, all of us felt the ocean of ecstasy that Srila Prabhupada was floating in. Then Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he comes from Russia, and he speaks about an article that's published in some magazine. and speaking about ISKCON and the Mahamantra, and Prabhupada was pleased. And also his books were distributed in the libraries. And that afternoon, Prabhupada had Tamal Krishna Maharaj read from Srimad Bhagavatam, and he sat on his bed, put on his reading spectacles, and for the next hour held Radharasi Bihari's forte and meditated on them, and occasionally leaning back with eyes closed while listening. This was the medicine he wanted. And Srimad Bhagavatam is important scripture that we all should dive into. It's so deep, It's a Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj is teaching it now. You're following it, right? It's amazing. I'm writing every line probably. I'm sitting in my room and just writing everything that he's saying, because it's such a beautiful book, and you can see how Prabhupada relished it. Then Prabhupada's health was deteriorating, and then there was a governor Prabhupada asked for Charanamrita from the deities, and in the afternoon the devotees had kirtan and read from Srimad Bhagavatam. Later S.K. Somaya came with Sri Prabhudas Patwari, the governor of Tamil Nadu. And they were actually shocked to see his condition. And Prabhupada had conversations with them and urged them to help, urged the politician to help with the visas for the devotees. So then, afterward he asked Abhiram what he thought. Abhiram did not like the Vaidya, but he spoke carefully, expecting that Prabhupada would follow the Vaidya anyway. Because the treatment was given in love, Prabhupada would feel some obligation to reciprocate. Prabhupada told Abhiram, this is interesting and something to note, that Shastra dictated that one should not overlook the advice of a big man. Governor means favored by Krishna. So if somebody is put in a position, meaning he's favored by Krishna. Governor means big man. No one can become a big man without being blessed by Krishna. You should not ignore the advice of a big man. This is really interesting. Just like when the Muslim ruler came to Sanatana Goswami, then he stood up to receive the person. There was so much respect. So yeah. So then Tamal Krishna Maharaj lost the key. Because there was Prabhupada's personal items, there's like a cabinet, and there's a key, which Prabhupada had given him, and he lost it. And then when Prabhupada asked for it, he couldn't find it. He said, I lost the key. Then Prabhupada said, call the GBC. I called the whole GBC here so we can decide what to be done. And later anyway, he tried some other key and it worked. And then Prabhupada said, you put the key in your Brahman thread. What a place to put it. Right? Anyway. So yeah, it was very interesting. Then there's so many interesting things to say. Yeah, I just kind of read through it and have it in my head. So so we'll just rush through a few more of them. Time is running out. Okay, let's see what we can skip. Oh yeah, there's different devotees felt, how if Prabhupada should go to Bombay, there was like this, everyone is trying to decide, or everybody's given the opportunity to decide whether Prabhupada should stay in Bombay or go to Vrindavan. And different devotees responded differently. Gopal Krishna disagreed, saying it better he remain for the opening. Another devotee said, no, we should go to Vrindavan. And when it came to Giriraj Maharaj's turn, he said, I said that in Bombay, with the constant noise from the construction, each day was difficult for Prabhupada, and each successive day would be even more difficult. Therefore, I concluded waiting 3 weeks would be too risky. So he wanted Prabhupada to go to Vrindavan. So there were different devotees. Some were not sure like that. And they wanted Prabhupada to be treated by artificial feeding. What do you call that? What do you call? Intravenous or what? Yeah. Intravenous feeding, yeah. But he was not happy with that, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur didn't like taking injections, so he thought about all that. He really didn't want that. Then Tamal Krishna Maharaj proposed, because he was for Prabhupada going to Vrindavan. Then now he changed his decision, where he's saying, well, he says, yeah. Then Tamal offered a new argument that Prabhupada staying in Bombay meant purpose for his living, to see the opening of the temple. So he changed his decision that he should stay. Then Prabhupada decided, well, I have to go to Vrindavan, and that is something that he wanted to do. And then there was because all the devotees from different parts of the world would want to come there, and devotees will give up the service, and Prabhupada said, no, it's okay. He agreed to them, whatever it is, whether they, because he wanted, perhaps he wanted to give them an opportunity to be, to see, also to teach them what dying is. Also, it's not this is a lesson to learn. So the GBC members were compulsory; they had to go, and then comes the. They prepared to go. So Harisori, he went first. But then when he went, he said the roads were closed, and it will be challenging. So they decided then he should fly. But then finally the devotees concluded that, well, he should go by train. So they arranged the train, and the train, it was booked for 11 a.m. So Giriraj Maharaj found a devotee. Well, he wasn't a devotee that time, but he was a Mayavadi actually, Mr. N.D. Desai. And because he had a big car, so to bring his car so that he could drive Prabhupada to the station. And he told him that Prabhupada is going to leave his body. So this person never heard of something like somebody, he was quite shocked that this person is going to leave his body. But that evening, Prabhupada was, I'll read it. That evening when Mr. Asnani came with the notary for Prabhupada to execute the power of attorney, I had not returned from the city, and despite Tamal Krishna's urging he proceed without me, Prabhupada refused to sign the document without my okay. So they were becoming trustees for the Prabhupada's properties, these two people, Giriraj Maharaj and Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And Prabhupada wanted, it's interesting that he wanted two people to sign the document. And when even in dealing with the bank, when it's finance, two people. This is interesting and something that we need to follow. Because, we never know when one can get into Maya or, take the money of Lord Krishna and use it for personal use. So he insisted, and early the next morning, Prabhupada had to sign a number of letters to the bank. And with those, although Tamal Krishna had approved them, Prabhupada wanted my consent. Tamal took it that Prabhupada was showing us that we must do all important businesses jointly together. So this is something that we should follow within our movement. We should implement something like that. If it's not, So, the next day, Prabhupada's assistant escorted him downstairs, hundreds of devotees outside, and they wept, they were crying, they were very much in tears, because this is the last time they're going to see Prabhupada. This was the last time. So yeah, Dr. Desai arrived with his Dodge, and he was like shocked to see Prabhupada, because he was a Mayavadi, and he was arguing with Prabhupada in this emaciated state. Because he says, this is the person that I fought, I debated with, discussed philosophy, but now he was just a bag of bones. And he says he was reminded of Krishna's description in the Bhagavad Gita of a person who withdraws within like a tortoise, pulling his limbs into his shell. It's like withdrawn, yeah. Dr. Desai arranged his car very nicely. It was cleaned by his wife, and nice flowers, and he felt he was like a Krura. When Akrura came to take away Krishna, it was so painful. The gopis felt so much separation, so much pain when Krishna was being taken from Vrindavan. But it was his duty, and then he began to drive slowly. There were a lot of potholes, and the description is given of the roads, and someone is suggesting that he drive faster, like because Upendra is saying drive faster, Tamal Krishna Maharaj is saying drive slower, because of Prabhupada's situation. But Prabhupada wanted the vehicle to go faster because the train was at 11, leaving at 11. There was some backward and forward, and then they arrived at the station in Bombay Central, 35 minutes ahead of the scheduled departure. And so they thought they had a lot of time to spare. Then they learned, when they checked with the station master, they realized that the train is leaving at 10:30. So they only had 5 minutes. So Prabhupada, somehow in his intuition, he knew that probably that, because being in India, train can leave 10 hours later too. So anytime it can leave. So they only had 5 minutes, and within that 5 minutes, he told, he ran, got a wheelchair, did everything, and it's very nicely put here. And told the station master, I'll do it, just hold it. An important person is going to leave his body in Vrindavan, so please just wait. And they somehow they managed, to get. There was a nice arrangement for Prabhupada, an AC compartment, and so they managed to put Prabhupada in. And this Dr. Desai, he left early in the morning at 4:30, so he was hungry and thirsty. So he bought a limca, and he was having like a drink. And then one of the devotees, Upendra, rushed to him and said, Prabhupada wants to see you. So he left his drink and he ran. And when he went, Prabhupada said, thank you for driving me. Now, this is so amazing that he's almost leaving his body, but look at that appreciation he had for the person who rendered him that service. And that is an important quality in a devotee. Because appreciation is an important component of bhakti. It's very important. So he thanked this Dr. Desai, and then Dr. Desai was touched that Prabhupada was giving up his body, and except for this small service, Dr. Desai felt that he hadn't done much of anything. He was overwhelmed with the feeling that he must surrender to Prabhupada at that very moment. In front of everyone, he paid full obeisance on the floor, caught hold of Prabhupada's feet and put his head on them. But anyway, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was saying, don't touch his feet. But he said, he realized this is the last chance I'll ever get. And looking up at Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, I surrender to you. You are my spiritual master. And then Prabhupada put his hand on Dr. Desai's head and blessed him. He didn't have much strength, but still he did that. And the train started moving. But then now, the train will move, so he had to jump off. So the devotees told him, you'd rather get off. And he had to get off. And he said, with tears in his eyes, returned to his car and got in. And then he says, lo and behold, he later recalled, there was Prabhupada's garland on the steering wheel. He had not forgotten me. He was so kind and considerate that he left the flower garland he was wearing on the steering wheel. I kept that garland for a long time. That was the last time I saw Prabhupada. From 1971 to 1977, I was fighting with him, debating with him, arguing with him. Finally, at the end, I surrendered. So it's very wonderful. This devotee, he came here twice to South Africa, and he spoke about this also. A very amazing person, N.D. Desai. What is his initiated name? Anybody remember? He's actually initiated by Raghunath Swami. Yeah. Anyway, I forget his name, but he's a very wonderful devotee, very intelligent. He left his body and helped the movement a lot, and gave a lot of money to the Srinathji. That's the name, yeah, Srinathji. Yeah, gave a lot of money to the project, the Vedic TOVP project, yeah. So it's very wonderful, this Leela of, when I'm reading this end now, it's such a painful to read it, so painful to discuss it. But this is Prabhupada, whom we all worship every day and love very much. I think we all seated in the room, I think we love him very much. Is that not so? So thank you very much. Is there any comments or questions? Anybody would like to say anything? There's a microphone. George, anybody want to say anything? Yes. What it on,
thank you so much, Raghunath Prabhu.
It's on. Okay.
I was just thinking as you were speaking, by material calculation, what Srila Prabhupada did, if we consider his age and his health, it doesn't seem possible. And his personal servants also speak about that when they remember him and their experiences with him, like when they were traveling with him. He would be going from one country to the next, one program to the next, one after the other. And they would be so tired, and they're in their 20s. And Prabhupada, it looks like he's elderly, but he didn't get tired. Or if he did get tired, he just kept going regardless of that. And it just shows that he's transcendental. And Shyam Sundar just comments on that. He says, where did that energy come from? Like when he was traveling with Prabhupada, there was one day where he was taking rest, and of course Prabhupada was working. Because whenever Shyam Sundar took rest, Prabhupada would be working before he took rest, and then after he had taken rest, Prabhupada would still be working. He didn't take rest, but his disciples, even though they took rest, he didn't. And then Shyam Sundar, as he was taking rest, in his mind he heard Shyam Sundar, he heard Prabhupada calling, so he was going to Prabhupada's room, and just before he entered, Prabhupada opened the door, and he was leaning on the door frame, and his skin was grey, and he was looking really weak. And then he said, "Oh, I have a cold." And then that night he rested. But the next morning he got up early and he said, okay, I'm ready for my morning walk. Just that recovery that happened didn't seem possible. And again that happened until eventually the Prabhupada's body became weaker and weaker and weaker. But while he was going, he just kept going. And his body is transcendental. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Nandarani.
Thank you for a wonderful class. It's always wonderful to listen about Prabhupada. In the beginning, you were mentioning about tolerance. It's something that I need more of. And we know Prabhupada is such an excellent example. Sometimes it's the devotees, we didn't get a chance to meet Srila Prabhupada, but the devotees around us are also emblems of tolerance. And Prabhu, if I really think about it, I've known you for such a long time. And you've been practicing Krishna consciousness, and it seems so easy for you. So I wonder if you could share your wisdom on that concept of tolerance from your own experience. How were you able to tolerate things? Because it's not that anybody can say they don't have to tolerate. We always have to tolerate on a daily basis. And I find it difficult to tolerate a lot of things. Thank you, Prabhu.
Well, when I was growing up, there's a few things in my life that really helped me to see things a little differently from others. As one, I knew that when I was a teenager, I knew that when you were 16, 17, your senses are wild and things like that. You want to have relationships, but I always thought that if you have a relationship with the opposite sex, or like you have a relationship with a female, is definitely absent from sex life. That idea was there in me, but I couldn't follow that. And I got married, and then that was it. Later, but I always had this thought, and I really knew. Only when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, I realized that at that point, that you can't exploit somebody else. That exploitation, and. I really, in my whole life, I really didn't want to exploit anybody. But I got married, and that, in that, because, you're satisfying your senses, there's some exploitation there. So when I heard Giriraj Maharaj speak, about these things, about we mustn't exploit, and it really struck me because I had that thought, because to go back to the spiritual world, one has to be free from sex life, he has to be free from it. At least we got 75%, 20%, 50% or 75%. We got at least a chance. Still we got a chance. So don't feel bad. But the point is that it's like you have to be free from these things. So that was my thought. But then I always had that in the back of my mind, and if you control your senses, like if you like the example of the tortoise now, it's. So you have to become like that. So my the way I was brought up, I learned a lot of tolerance from my father. Actually, that way it came from. Before I came to Krishna consciousness, so it was not something that like I picked up, and when I came to Krishna consciousness, but it was already there. It was like a quality that I had, and we went through many like trials and tribulations in our life. From like I was working from a very young age, like I was like maybe from standard 2 I was working, and so I had like that type of life. So I worked, and I was exposed to lots of things, to different things, to gangsterism, fighting, to everything. I grew up in a city. I played football in a city, and it was like all these different things. But in my mind, I knew I will never drink, smoke, or gamble. Those things were out of the question. There was no ways I was going to do that. So my whole life was like, like I was determined, and that helped me. The upbringing that I had, especially my father, who whom I imbibed all these qualities. He was not very much well educated, but very wise. So I learned a lot from him. So the tolerance, then like, when you're exposed to these things, then you become stronger. And that's how I grew up. And then even in the people that I kind of schooled with, or the people that my teachers I had, they were so brilliant people that I learned so much from my teacher at high school. And I worked with him later in the education department. And he was, quite a few of them. And then the way we were, in primary school, like how we were disciplined, very, very much disciplined. And I met one of my teachers at a funeral.